Coming up on this edition of Community Insider, stay tuned. We're at Center Hill Cemetery on Hills Creek with Mr. Gary Clendenin as we come to you. He's going to give us a tour of the cemetery and a lot of history that you may not know in this beautiful community. That and much more on this edition of Community Insider.
Welcome to another edition of Community Insider. Join us as we travel Middle Tennessee, uncovering history and experiencing the adventure of unique stories and events coming to you inside your community.
Security Federal Savings Bank is always pleased to provide virtually every banking service you could ever need. But more than that, we are proud to offer a relationship with you, your family, or your company. We've been here supplying just what you need and building a trust, a relationship. And that's something hard to find these days. Our bankers are here for you, here to help. If you are interested in a relationship, come to the friendliest bank in town, Security Federal Savings Bank, member FDIC.
The MyUsage app is a way to conveniently pay online, anytime, day or night. You can also come by any Caney Fork Electric office and sign up for the prepay option available using the MyUsage app. Know exactly how much electricity is used each day and the cost. Best of all, no monthly bill. You can set up email or text alerts, keep track of your usage, and pay your bill, all with the MyUsage app from Caney Fork. Caney Fork Electric, keeping you informed.
Douglas and Lanier, that's where I choose to be. Douglas and Lanier, that's the agency for me.
For rock-solid insurance coverage or sound financial planning for my family's future, Douglas and Lanier is where I choose to call home.
Grace Family Pharmacy announces new medication packaging service. It provides a simpler, safer medication experience through convenient, personalized packaging using the latest in pharmacy robotics. We're located at 357 West Main Street. Our phone number is 931-473-6418.
McMinnville, you're a great place to be. McMinnville, Tennessee.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Womack. Welcome to this edition of Community Insider. We have Mr. Gary Clendenin here at Center Hill Cemetery. And Gary, thank you so much. Once again, we've had you on several shows already. This is another unique opportunity on Community Insider to just show some of the history here in this beautiful community and what it means to come hands-on with the people who lived here, the history. And I think you're beginning our story and history lesson right with sort of the one that first brought civilization sort of to this community.
Well, kind of. There were some people here about the same time. You know, Elisha Pepper was in Warren County. I think he was the first settler. But Henry J.A. Hill is the reason why Hills Creek is called Hills Creek. And it was first called Indian Village Creek. That's how it was first referred to. And it became then known as Hills Creek because he settled here. If you read McMinnville Milestone, the book, it states that he came out of East Tennessee with some more. Family research has shown that he has actually came out of North Georgia, that there was they had settled in North Georgia for a while, and they cut a wagon trace into this area through the Cumberland Plateau and down into this valley, and then all the way to Viola before settling here. So you can pick your story, East Tennessee or Georgia. I kind of believe probably the Georgia story because there's been more research done.
Yeah. Gary, for the folks that's watching, I want to make sure they understand why you think it's so important to keep history, because I know you love history, from the music you write to, you know, the many things that you do in the community. As you're showing us this, why is it important for you to preserve this history?
Well, I guess I take inspiration from our forefathers. We can learn a lot from them. They inspire me. You know, all the hardships that they had to go through and all the hard work and to get to where they got. And then we build upon, you know, have built our lives on our ancestors' lives. And they had it a whole lot tougher than we do today. And so I guess I'm very inspired and thankful for them. And, you know, the old saying is you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So here's where we have Henry J. Hill buried with his wife Susanna. And he first came into this area about 18 and 2. And he's buried here. His father, Isaac Hill, is buried on the Hills Trace, about where he ran a tavern. They died days apart. Henry J.A. was about 50. I think Isaac was maybe pushing 80. And he ran the tavern out on top of the plateau from here at the stagecoach stop. Henry succumbed. He had, as a boy, he suffered a accident in a tar kiln, which was where they smoldered pine logs. They built an earthen structure and smoldered pine logs to get the resin out of them to make tar. And so he was injured as a boy, and that's what's reported to he's finally succumbed to those injuries at the age of 50. And over here's the main Hills Creek Road, Jonathan. It goes up the Hill Mountain, it's called. Going up the mountain, it was the mail and telegraph route to Chattanooga. Henry J.'s son has a son, Hugh Lawson White, who became a U.S. congressman, which we'll visit his grave later. They had a big plantation here at Hugh Lawson White's death, and he had 43,000 acres in this plantation, who he divided among 8 heirs. But anyway, he built, I've got information that he built a turnpike in the 1820s. It was used as a Trail of Tears, one of the routes of the Trail of Tears, the Taylor route, and they came down that road off the mountain. And I actually have a copy of a journal by the Reverend Daniel S. Buttrick, and I have written a song about this. And Daniel S. Buttrick and his wife Elizabeth accompanied their congregation from the Brainerd Mission on that route of the Trail of Tears all the way to the New Indian Territories. And he writes daily about that. Friday, November 9th, we descended the mountain. The ground was frozen and the mountain steep. And the descent was very long, so that I became alarmed, fearing that I could scarcely get down with our carryall, though we had no load. It seemed to me almost impossible for heavy wagons to descend without damage, yet all came down safe, and we camped on the Collins River in Warren County, Tennessee. Here the citizens were kind, and some of them seemed to be truly the children of God. Saturday, November 10th. The women attended to washing and the men getting wood and smith work. This morning a Cherokee woman died and was buried. Sabbath, November 11th, we held meeting at a house near the camps. A large congregation assembled from the neighborhood, and I spoke from 1 Timothy 4:8. At night, as on Saturday night, we were afflicted by some wicked white men and a few drinking Cherokees. Monday, November 12th, we crossed the Collins River and proceeded about 10 miles and camped near McMinnville. This is a pleasant village and doubtless contains some of the followers of the Lamb. Oh, how different do Christians appear to us after having been tormented with the blasphemies of a wicked few weeks. The rain commenced falling soon after dark. The night was very unpleasant, yet we slept comfortably in our tents. And the journal goes on. They leave McMinnville and go to Warren County. And when I first came across this journal, it made me proud a little bit and happy that they were treated well here, you know. And I have always had I guess that's one thing, I've always had a high opinion of the people of Warren County about how they work together and they've helped people. And so this goes back to the 1830s, and they were still doing the same thing, helping out people. This is proof, eyewitness proof. So yeah, I've got a song. It's called "The Trail." It kind of chronicles the Buttrick's involvement in the Trail of Tears. It's kind of told through a ghost story, of a farmer picking up an artifact and resurrecting the ghost of the wagon train of Taylor's wagon train in the Buttrick. So that's it's got some native flute on there and some fiddle and guitar, and it tells the story of the beginning. And when the other thing about the Buttricks is they went all the way with their congregation to the New Indian Territories. They stayed with them until their deaths, and their tombstones are first carved in Cherokee and then in English. We've got a grave here for two children, and I believe they're the children of Hugh, Lawson Whites, and the legend states they died about the time of the Civil War, just after, and that he placed this rock on top of their graves to keep people from digging for valuables, thinking that maybe because it was during Reconstruction and times were really hard, and they were a wealthy, family. They had a lot of land and a lot of assets. So, put that rock on there. I don't have any story about how the rock got there, but it's always intrigued me. There had to be oxen and pulleys and a lot of math and geometry going on here to get that done.
You mentioned the Civil War. I know this was a quiet place, remote from everywhere else, but during the Civil War, there was some convoys, stuff like that was coming.
There was actually a skirmish fought here, and I've actually got an account in this book. The Yankee artillerymen. There was General Joe Wheeler hit a wagon train in the Sequatchie Valley in the fall of 1863. They retreated across the Cumberland Plateau with everything that they raided, with mules and food and supplies and all this stuff. And part of his men, they went one way to McMillan, part of them come off here. Well, with the federal troops in hot pursuit. So the ones that came off in here had a rear guard action, and the federal troops came off the mountain there, and they met them. First they met them at the top, and then they met them at the bottom, and there was a barricade. They barricaded the valley with fence cross ties. Not cross ties, but fence rails. And we're using that as a barricade and for cover to shoot from and all this. The one of the Union officers was a man by the name of Eli Lilly, who founded the Eli Lilly and Company. And he was an artillery officer, and there's this book is full of his references, and his men, they kept a written account of their travels during the Civil War. And so anyway, they had their shooting and their battle and skirmish. The Confederate forces lit the barricade on fire and then later retreated behind it. And that's recorded in here, and it's funny thing, the old people handed it down. It was handed down in our oral tradition that there was a battle fought here, and that the rebels fought from behind a burning barricade of fence rails. Well, fast forward to about 1990, and I get contacted by a park ranger from Chickamauga Battlefield. And he said, they come up here and they're asking questions. He said, has there ever been any Civil War battles fought up here? And I said, well, yeah, they said the Confederate troops barricaded the valley up here and with a rail fence and set it afire, and they fought. And he looked at me and he says, you're kidding. He said, no. He said, that's in this book. And so I got, one year for Christmas, I got this book. But anyway, this book brought them over here to look, and they found some artifacts, and it was Eli Lilly, who founded the Eli Lilly and Company, the medical company. He was a captain or a lieutenant in the Indiana Artillery, and he was literate and kept records, and there were several of his men that were very literate, and they all recorded their take on the Civil War. And so that's in this book and talks about coming into, let's see here if I can get to the part about Hills Creek. About 3 p.m., the advance of the column came upon the rear guard of Martin's force at a place just before the road began the descent from the Cumberland Mountain, and drove these men down the slope slowly and cautiously for fear of an ambush. In Hill's Cove, at the foot, they found a brigade of rebels posted behind rail barricades, which the Union cavalry was unable to dislodge, and so Wilder's mounted cavalry was dismounted and with their 7-shooters quietly approached the rebel lines until challenged by the Johnnies. The next instant, wrote Colonel Avery, a vivid sheet of continuous flame blazed and lit up the woods for some 30 yards in front of us, while a rolling, unbroken, deafening volley invaded the quiet of the night with startling effect. The storm of the noise and the flash fairly took one's breath away. The thought that the hurricane of blinding sound represented a solid rush of death-dealing bullets was terrifying. Colonel Avery reported that the firing was high and resulted in few casualties, but had the aim been low, our line would have been swept away out of existence. In this action, Lilly's men were spectators since there was no suitable position to emplace artillery. When it became too dark to distinguish friend from foe, the Yankees ceased firing, and during the night, the rebels slipped through the lines and escaped, leaving their dead on the field. The camp that night was on an old cornfield so full of stones that the soldiers had difficulty clearing a place to sleep. But Henry Campbell, after search, found a soft spot in a briar patch and slept as well as one could, not having anything to eat all day. Our poor horses had only what they could get off of old cord stalks. At 4 a.m. on October 4th, the chase was resumed with the federal force pursuing Wheeler's men towards McMinnville, passing some dead rebels, Crook reported 10, and arms and accoutrements scattered along the road. They also passed the Johnnies' camp of the previous night and found the site was strewn with pickle bottles, sardine tins, Cove oyster cans, and the remainder of the sutler store they had captured when they destroyed the train in Squatchy Valley. The sight of these luxuries caused many a mouth to water among our hungry boys. Jonathan, here's the grave of Hugh Lawson Whitehill and his wife. Hugh Lawson Whitehill became a U.S. congressman for the state of Tennessee. He had this plantation of 43,000 acres here. He had 2 brandy stills, and that's how he made his living among other, the regular farming occupations. Down here, the later mill was built in around the 1880s. Actually got a picture. There's a picture in McMinnville milestone of that mill. They had an earlier grist mill that there was a turbine mill that sit upstream, and there was reported to have ground cornmeal for the Indians on the Trail of Tears. And there's a log house that's in Bishop Springs now that used to sit right down here beside the grist mill. And in the 1970s, it was tore down, and I asked my grandfather about it. It had bullet holes and arrowheads in this old log structure. And I asked him, I said, well, how'd that come to be? There's no story of any Indian battles. He said, no, the Indians took target practice on that building. I said, target practice? That didn't make any sense to me at the time, because that's I knew nothing about the Trail of Tears, knew nothing about anything else. Yeah, they took that was the oral tradition that they took target practice. So after learning about the Trail of Tears and the cornmeal being ground for the people on the Trail of Tears, then it kind of all comes together. Well, these guys are probably down there waiting for their cornmeal, and as to pass the time, they had a shooting match. So those logs are now in a house turned to the inside where you can see them in Bishop Springs. I've been to that house. So they still exist. And you can see the arrowheads embedded in the holes in the log. So just across the way around that woodland over there, you can see there's kind of a little hill in front of the mountain rising. It's called the Woodland, and there's a earthen mill race, and it's about 1 mile long. And Hugh Lawson White had his men to dig that mill race, and it went to the mill that he built in the 1880s that I'll show you a picture of. He stayed in that Uncle Jeff Lido was the miller. It ran the overshot wheel. And prior to that, they had a mill that set upstream that was a turbine wheel that the wheel was actually in the water and it turned. It kind of course, those kind of mills are hard to keep going because the floods wash them out and stuff, where the overshot mill was more protected from the flood water because it was up out of the water. But they dug on grave this channel around the side of that hill a mile long. They were able to do that. They had the engineering skills to do that. And they built a dam at the upper, where the main Hills Creek comes out of the mountain. They built a dam up there to shoot the water over into the mill race to come that 1 mile and turn the water wheel down here at the old grist mill.